Good evening, everyone. My name is Jen Penarski, and I work with the Communications and Public Engagement team. Our public engagement session will begin in a minute. I see that there is one individual who's joined us so far this evening, and so welcome, Mary, and thank you for taking the time to join us. So welcome again. Welcome to the City Budget Talks, a series of public engagement sessions to talk about the City of Kingston budgets. This session is live streamed and recorded, and to protect your privacy, video and microphones are turned off. To help you make the most of your experience tonight, we have some technology troubleshooting tips for you. You can view your view options. So those resources are available on Get Involved Kingston, or if you have any questions, you can drop them into the chat and we'll help you out. If you get disconnected from the internet, you can call into the meeting using the information that is in your RSVP and email confirmation that you would have received from the city. You can also follow along with us on YouTube, where this session is live streamed and closed captioned. There will be a Q&A portion for tonight's budget talk, and here's how you can ask questions. You can ask a question in writing by typing in the Q&A area, and your name and question will be visible to all participants. You can call in. If you've connected by phone, you can ask a question verbally during the Q&A period, and we'll turn on your microphone to hear your voices. The Q&A responses will be shared in the project reporting back, and we also have a survey open on Get Involved Kingston. Up on the screen now are the city's guidelines for participation. If you've joined us before for a public engagement session, these will be familiar to you. And what this does is help guide a conversation that is open to all ideas, keeps us on track and on time, and includes everyone in the conversation. I'll leave these up for a moment. And if you have any questions or objections to the guidelines for participation, please use the raise hand function. Seeing no objections or concerns to the guidelines, from here, I'm going to turn over the conversation to Lana Folds, the Director of Financial Services with the City of Kingston.
Thanks, Jen. Next slide, please. Tonight, we will be discussing Rideaucrest long care facility with Casey Keys. Casey will be giving us an overview of the services and levels of service that she provides, the current priorities and initiatives of the Rideaucrest home, how the services are funded, including the property taxation and non-tax revenues, any budget challenges and strategies, and finally, we will gather your feedback and input. Next slide, please. As you are considering any questions to ask later in the session, we'd appreciate your feedback on effectiveness of the services and service levels provided. Is the department or agency providing the right services at the right level? Are the services meeting the objectives of the community? Are the services or service levels that are not required? We are also looking for ideas on efficiencies of the services. Are there any ways that we can provide these services more effectively or efficiently? Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Rob and Casey.
Thank you, Lana, and thank you to everyone joining us online tonight. My name is Rob Hosier. I'm a communications officer at the City of Kingston and your host this evening. And today we're talking to Casey Keys, administrator of Rideaucrest Home, who will tell us more about their budget and how it funds the services they provide. But as always, first some background. Each year, the financial services team reaches out to the community for input on the city's operating and capital budgets, while at the same time broadening the community's understanding of how the budgets are built and how limited financial resources are allocated and prioritized. As part of this initiative, last year, we launched a mini-series called Virtual Budget Talks, where residents could have a more relaxed and candid conversation with specific departments and agencies. You can find these sessions on the city's YouTube account, and we'll provide this link in the chat. These sessions provide you, our community, a chance to ask questions and provide feedback. But before we get into our conversation and then the Q&A, I want to extend greetings on behalf of our city's Chief Financial Officer, Desiree Kennedy, who was not able to join us tonight. Desiree asked me to extend her thanks to everyone who has taken the time to virtually join us and looks forward to reviewing the feedback carefully. I would also like to welcome the city's Deputy Treasurer and my lifeline financially, Lana Foltz, who is in the room with us tonight and who you've heard from the outset of the evening. So without further ado, get to the matter at hand and talk about Rideaucrest. Welcome, Casey, to our budget engagement.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So first things first, we'll take a little bit of a broader perspective on the subject right now. Tell us a little bit about Rideaucrest and some of the services you provide.
Sure. So Rideaucrest Home is a fully accredited long-term care facility that's owned and operated by the City of Kingston. The Rideaucrest Home has quite a long, rich history in Kingston. The original building was built in 1935 on Montreal Street, which is currently the house for our Housing Social Services Department. Over the time that it was at Montreal Street, it did expand a number of times to become a 256-bed home to provide services to the population, the elderly population here in Kingston. In 1993, the new home, our clinic site, opened, which overlooks Kingston Inner Harbor.
Gorgeous.
And at that time, we decreased to 170 beds, which we remain at 170 beds at this time. So we have resident rooms that are all semi-private and private by design. We have 4 levels, 4 terraces, we call them. Each terrace has 42 resident rooms outside of our first floor, which is our secure unit, which we have 34 beds on that room. So we have over 200 employees that serve Rideaucrest Home. We have within those employees, we have a number of internal departments. We have the nursing department, which is comprised of personal support workers, registered practical nurses, and registered nurses. The nursing team provides all aspects of direct care to residents in regards to their activities of daily living, so bathing, dressing, toileting, feeding, emotional support. They also provide medical assistance such as medication administration, assessments and treatment of injury, and they also liaise with our medical teams. We have 2 physicians and a nurse practitioner on staff. We have the dietary department, which is comprised of both cooks and dietary aides.
Okay.
So this team provides all aspects of meal service, from food production and forecast to cooking and serving of all the meals. We provide 3 meals a day and 3 nourishment passes or snack passes, as we call them. And we also have a full-time dietitian on staff who really is able to assess our residents to ensure they have safe textures of food, as well as healthy choices and options. We have our environmental services department. This team provides all aspects of housekeeping services, as well as on-site laundry service. Over the course of the pandemic, this team grew to incorporate universal workers. And those universal workers have been instrumental in providing all of the active screening required for COVID, as well as the rapid antigen test for all individuals that enter our home, as well as providing high-touch surface cleaning throughout our facility as we've made our way through this pandemic. We have a life enrichment department. This team provides programming services to all of our residents. They plan and adapt their programming to ensure that they're really providing what our residents are requiring. So group programming, as well as individualized special programs. We have our business office, which this team does all aspects of accounting services. We have our scheduling and our staffing department, as well as other business operations in that group. We also work very well with facilities management and construction services, which is a division of our city, which they help us in providing all aspects of maintenance services to our home. So really, really close group that we rely on heavily. Our home has over 500 individuals on the wait list that are in our community that are actively seeking long-term care placement. So that over the course of my tenure with the city, which is about 8 years now, that just keeps growing. So real need for long-term care services in the city and really across the province. But to understand our operations and our budget challenges in long-term care, you really need to understand how we operate in 2022. So over the last decade, we've really seen a shift in the resident population coming into long-term care. So no longer are we seeing individuals walking into our home upon admission in relatively healthy state. We're really seeing many individuals with a number of pre-existing health conditions and really complex diagnoses at this point, requiring really significant medical care. So quite a challenge for our staff. Not only are we seeing complex physical challenges, but we're also seeing really significant mental health challenges. So really unique care needs that our staff are having to adapt to, and they're really having to ensure that they're educated to be able to provide optimal care to our residents. And in order to ensure that we're providing accurate service and optimal service to our residents, we work really close with a number of community partners. So we rely heavily on Behavioral Supports Ontario, Addictions and Mental Health Services, Kingston Health Science Centre, Providence Care Hospital, and of course, during the pandemic, we really have worked alongside KFLNA Public Health Units, who have been instrumental in getting us through the last 2.5 years. Another aspect of our services that is really important to us is ensuring that we support student placements within our community.
Right.
So we work alongside many adult learning centers such as KLC and training colleges, as well as St. Lawrence and Queen's University, to ensure that we're providing student placements to get people into our sector and into the healthcare sector in general.
My gosh, and all that happens on one location, in one facility.
It's pretty quick overview, but that's,
My gosh, and just the answer to that one question just tells you how much is going on in that one particular location and how much input is going on in that location. And we're definitely going to get to the financials and some of the numbers, but first tell me more about how your team has navigated the pandemic. You talked a little bit about that, and obviously seniors, and by extension long-term care, has been severely impacted by the pandemic.
Absolutely.
So how did it affect Rideaucrest, and how did your team navigate this?
Yeah, I'm not even certain where to start when it comes to the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a real tragic story in our long-term care sector, in a healthcare field that has been historically underfunded by the province and really left unprepared for disasters such as this. The sector suffered greatly and really saw significant devastation. So unfortunately, we saw the COVID virus invade our homes across the province and spread and affect our residents at a really incredible rate. With no vaccine or medical abilities in the early days of the pandemic, we unfortunately experienced a great number of deaths within the long-term care sector, provincially, even further out, but even just speaking about Ontario. It's been really 2.5 years of a nightmare for those employees that have worked through that. All our homes worked, provincially worked with Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, as well as the Chief Medical Officer of Health, to react to the devastation and the ever-changing mandates and directives that were put in place, and all in an attempt to try and keep our residents safe. At the end of the day, that was what we were all trying to do. And in our attempts to keep people safe, unfortunately, we had to implement practices that caused heartbreak and upset to residents and families by ceasing visitation at times and implementing isolation requirements. It was extremely difficult for everyone to get through this and having to just kind of navigate through that time. However, we hope that we're on the other side of this pandemic. Coming through the other side of this pandemic, we now have vaccines and booster doses that we've provided to our residents and to our staff, and it's really keeping them safe. So despite the fact that we're continuing to see a lot of COVID activity within the community and still within our long-term care homes, we're not seeing near the devastation that we saw in the early days of the pandemic. And having come through this disaster, we're now being faced with some further challenges. And just to get to your question a bit more, recruitment and retention is a challenge in healthcare in general, especially in long-term care. Staff exhaustion coming through this.
And that's nurses and PSWs.
Absolutely.
That's across the board, really.
It's in our kitchen, it's in our housekeeping department. It's really been tough. And we're seeing low staff morale as we've all kind of come down from this. Staff looking to take leaves. So real big challenge for us to try and overcome that. Residents and families. So with so many difficulties in long-term care over the last 2.5 years, and a lot of negative press that we've received from within the sector.
Sure.
Confidence in families and residents is a challenge, and we need to now rebuild that trust and confidence to know that we're doing the right things and we're here for the right reasons. So that's something we're working with. Funding uncertainties. So while the province has released additional funding to help prevent and contain COVID-19, our funding still remains unclear from quarter to quarter. So really trying to forecast with these funding challenges is worrisome. And then, of course, policy and directive changes. So, as mentioned, throughout the pandemic, we've seen very rigid policies and directives released by the province and the Chief Medical Officer of Health to protect and secure those that work, live, and visit in long-term care. And while the guidance has been supportive, it has also been rapidly changing and extremely difficult for everybody to adapt to. But with the negative also comes the positive. And unfortunately, it has taken a tragedy like this to enact some change.
Sure.
But we have seen some change in our sector over the last little while. So funding changes to long-term care. So they're looking to increase the level of care that we provide to the residents provincially to be at an average of 4 hours of resident care per resident per day. This pre-pandemic was an average of 2.4 for
Oh,
the
wow.
sector. So really significant when it comes to staffing changes. And we've seen changes to legislation and regulations in an attempt to protect our residents. And we've also seen the province really listen to homes and what homes have to say, as well as our advocate partners within long-term care, so that the changes that are being made make sense and are going to, at the end of the day, be beneficial to our residents.
I can't imagine, and the toll it would take on your team to be on edge for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
You know, because that one slip, that one, that one mistake or something could, spread. And my gosh, the amount of work and following those guidelines that change so rapidly, so often, it's just, it boggles my mind how y'all did it. My gosh, it's unreal. But moving a little bit from the pandemic, looking a little bit ahead, what are some of your key priorities and initiatives in 2022? And then really as we think towards 2023.
Sure. So as I mentioned, the 4 hours of care is a really big initiative for us. So this was implemented in the end of 2021. So our first funding stream came at the beginning of this year. And this is right up until 2025. So it's really a multi-year plan. And we are working on that plan to ensure that the changes that we're going to make over the course of the next couple of years as we continue to add staff to get to that average of 4 hours of care makes sense and works for our home and is what we need. So we're really tracking that, monitoring that, and working at that to ensure that we are on track. As we've seen through the pandemic, there is new legislation that has come from the province. So the Fixing Long-Term Care Act was created in 2021 by the province and was enacted in April of this year. So our team with this is legislation and regulation requirements. So we want to ensure that we understand these new requirements, that we really have a grasp of what the changes are going to be. There's also changes in oversight by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care over long-term care homes. So we, with that comes changes to inspection protocols and enforcement practices. And we want to, again, ensure that we fully understand the changes and that we have a chance to educate our staff on what that's going to look like moving forward. So that's a big one. And then Rideaucrest renovation. So we are in a home that is almost 30 years old. And despite the fact that we've seen some upgrades happen over the course of that 30 years, we are at a place where we're really requiring some significant upgrades. So this plan has been in place for a while, but of course the pandemic kind of halted and changed some of those plans, but
didn't derail them.
Didn't derail them.
That's
No,
great.
no. And we're actually full steam ahead at this point.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we have already replaced all of the resident floors, in our resident rooms and in our hallways and our
Actual flooring
terraces.
itself.
That's right.
Okay.
And we're currently in the process of fully upgrading all of the resident washrooms. So the washrooms they share within their rooms. We are also actively fully renovating all of the shower and tub rooms right now, replacing all of our main elevators. That's in the works. And we are in the final stage of planning our renovation of our common areas. So our spaces where our residents gather. So that will have a new nursing station. It will expand our dining room and also open up our main common areas to help accommodate for social distancing for times when we see continued outbreaks, as we do over the course of every year with viruses as they make their way through. So from an infection prevention and control standpoint, really important for that piece of the renovation. And then we are also upgrading all of our laundry equipment to high efficiency units. which is also great. So lots happening.
Sounds small, but that's a
really,
huge
really
thing, I
great stuff.
know.
It's very exciting to see it all kind of come to
Sure.
fruition.
And if you haven't had the chance to visit Rideaucrest, have the opportunity, even without the renovations, it's a beautiful place to
Oh,
begin
thanks.
with, and it's
Yeah.
amazing when you walk in there. Now we've talked about a lot of stuff so far, but we're gonna have to get to the financials.
Sure.
So let's talk budget. Tell me about your overall budget, and really how are your services funded?
Sure.
And then go slow because I'm learning with everybody here, so
Yeah,
I'll be asking questions along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So from an operating budget perspective, we have a total revenue budget of just over $20 million annually that we work with. So majority of that is subsidized by the province. So 66%, just almost $13.5 million comes directly from the province.
Okay.
2% of that comes from accommodation services. So the money that the residents actually pay to live at Rideaucrest. 1%, so relatively small dollars in the grand scheme of things, just under $100,000, comes from the province as they reconcile expenditures from previous years. They're quite lagged in that, so we do see some funding come through year over year. And then, of course, we have our municipal contribution from the tax base, which is 31% of our budget and just over $6 million. And that allows a home such as us to provide some amenities and services that other homes may not have the ability to do so. So that in a nutshell is really how we are funded from an operational perspective. From a capital perspective, we have approximately $80,000 in city funded capital monies that we work with, as well as $93,000 from provincial minor capital money. And Rideaucrest prioritizes every year equipment that's required. So things such as beds, mattresses, medical equipment, furniture, dietary equipment, that sort of thing. We do have a 15-year plan that we work with on that to ensure that we have planned for equipment as it's going to need to be replaced and or upgraded. For larger projects such as the renovations we're going through right now, much of that money is flowed through facilities management construction services with the city. So they kind of hold those projects and the budgets that go with that. And we just help kind of facilitate the projects on site. So really that's how we're funded at a high level, of course.
Yeah, looking at the screen here, it all makes sense. So, overall, what the city part would be the portion of property taxes and non, tax revenue type things. That's which would that be?
That's the 31%.
The 31% then. Okay.
Just over $6 million annually.
Okay. Perfect. Absolutely. And so looking ahead, what are your key budget challenges, and maybe identify some strategies that would address it?
I love that slide. That's our staff, our cooking staff in the background.
That is awesome.
Yeah, which is a fantastic picture. So some challenges that we deal with from a financial perspective, provincial funding. So that's always a bit of a challenge. There's element of risk and uncertainty with provincial funding, with government as it's changing, as we're seeing right now, of course, an election coming on, and as well as priority changes within an established government already. So different funding streams that come through over the course of every year, that can always be a bit challenging. And of course, that's also coupled with timing challenges. So the provincial fiscal year does not align with the municipal fiscal year. So that's always something that we try and work around. Right now, increased costs. So of course, everybody is seeing increased costs everywhere. We are definitely feeling that in long-term care. So the availability and costing of medical equipment, as well as raw food and nutritional supplies, we're seeing huge increase there. Staffing constraints. So from a budget perspective, overtime costs, especially when we're actively trying to recruit staff, we're also incurring overtime costs, which is difficult. And then of course capital projects. So with a 30-year building and it's 120,000 square feet, it's
that much activity going on every day, every minute.
Yeah, we want to ensure that it is what we need. So logistically, it's very difficult to try and plan those, and expenses, are just going up. And it's also difficult for us to try and have contractors on site that are able and willing to work in long-term care, that have the infection control practices in place that we're requiring, especially at a time like this. So that's always a bit challenging. And then some strategies that we, kind of work with to try and deal with this stuff is provincial funding. We try and forecast and trend that. So With support from our corporate financial analyst that works here within the city, we forecast and trend funding based on level of care reporting requirements and prior year actual revenues to anticipate what the current year funding will be until it is confirmed for us. So monitoring incentive funding reports to accurately track expected revenue and monies due back to the province. These funding opportunities have very specific expenditure guidelines that we have to work within and timelines. So we want to accurately monitor that and reconcile so that we are utilizing that money and not having to have it be recovered by the province. So increased costs, we have the advantage of being able to utilize silver group purchasing through our extended fair assist contract to benefit from group purchasing incentives and pricing. They are constantly shopping the local market to ensure that all available efficiencies are realized, which is really great for us. Each department leads, so supervisors and managers within the department are on a monthly basis monitoring their budgets to ensure that expenditures are on track, that large purchases are planned for, and that supplies, equipment, and preventive maintenance are adequately stocked and completed. So that's great. From a health and human resource perspective, we really work closely with our corporate human resources department and internal leadership teams to ensure that our recruitment and retention strategies are working, and if we need to change those, we also want to monitor and ensure that we're not incurring really high costs with overtime, which so that's really something we like to avoid. And then capital projects and forecasting again. So with current projects and the increase in supply costs, of course, that we talked about, capital projects and renovations have caused significant scope reprioritization. So we have all these great projects in place now and underway, but we've had to take some other things off the table that we may have wanted to have done just because of simply the costing of things at this time. So that's kind of what we're doing in terms of strategy and to deal with some of the challenges we have.
Those are challenges. And but it sounds like again, y'all are figuring things out. And if you work in the PSW as a nurse or anything like that, you can vouch for these people. It's an amazing place to work. My gosh, and it's really passionate folks. So that's all the questions I have for you at this time. But so we're going to open up to attendees and to see if we've already had a couple questions already submitted. The reminder, if you want to submit your questions, just put them in the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen there. But while folks are doing that, I'll ask a couple of questions that got submitted. So these are the curveball questions.
Sure. Absolutely.
Can you outline a positive change that the province has implemented since the pandemic onset? And I assume this means towards long-term care.
Yeah. I would have to say that the biggest positive change that we've seen, which we've already talked about, is the 4 hours of care. It has been tremendously positive change to our sector. Our staff work so hard every day to provide as much care as possible, and to think that we will now be funded to have more staff is exciting. To think of the opportunities that we'll have to better serve our residents. I mean, it's really something. So we're really excited about that.
Awesome. That's a huge step. Yeah. Question number 2. What are you most proud of? We talked a lot, and you had a lot of lists on this, but what were you most proud of as a long-term care operator navigating the pandemic?
Yeah.
And so you did a lot, and you managed a lot, and a lot of the planning was maybe delayed but on track. But what are you most proud of?
Having worked through the pandemic over the course of the last 2.5 years, I have to say that I am most proud of the team of people that I have worked with over this time, and get to continue to work with. The entire team at Rideaucrest has been absolutely amazing throughout the pandemic, with things changing constantly and the dread and fear of being infected with the virus, especially early in the pandemic, along with the anxiety of it coming into our home. Yes. The team never failed and never fractured. And their ability to quickly adapt and accept the changes that were taking place, along with their resiliency when times were especially tough, it has been absolutely tremendous. When I speak of the team, I mean every single employee within every single department of our home, as well as our families and our caregivers who are instrumental in how we provide our service. The group all came together and did absolutely everything they could to protect our home, despite really significant sacrifices that everybody had to make. I always knew we had a fantastic team of people that surrounded our home, and the pandemic has just proved that beyond a doubt for me. And to be honest, to be able to work and associate myself with the group that I do is something I'm extremely proud of.
Great answer. I love that answer.
Yeah.
And a great question. And I'm just going back to Lana in the room here. Do you have any other questions, Lana? We have another question.
Hi, Rob. It's Jen. So we have a couple of questions from Mary. And Mary, at any time, if you would like to join the conversation, we can turn on your microphone. Mary has two questions. I'll read them both, and because I think they can be combined into one answer. Is Rideaucrest going to receive any of the capital money that the province is giving to long-term care for redevelopment and new builds? And her second question is Rideaucrest considering changing its model care to something like the butterfly model?
So happy to answer those questions.
Question one first?
Yeah, question one first.
Okay.
So the province has provided lots of money, or has allocated lots of money for redevelopment of homes and new builds of home as they are releasing a number of new beds to the province. And those redevelopment monies are going to homes that are not, that are B standard and below. So Rideaucrest is an A standard home, so considered to be top class home, if you will. So we are not eligible for funds as it relates to redevelopment. And we're not looking at this time to have a rebuild. We are an A standard home, and we have an absolutely beautiful property. You know, we are on the water, which is absolutely fantastic. So that is not something we're looking to do at this point. We're quite confident that with the renovations that we have planned and the monies that we do have allocated from the city to do that, that our home, which is already a gorgeous home, is going to be, you know, even more beautiful once we're done.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you remember question two?
Question two. I might need a bit.
We repeat the question one more time, Jen. I apologize.
Sorry, Jen.
Is Rideaucrest considering changing its model or something like the butterfly model?
So we're always looking at new ways that we can provide service, and there's a number of different models that we always are looking at. The butterfly model is one of many that homes are starting to work with. There's lots in Europe. I know that, you know, there's always some new ways in which to provide care and to really engage those that are suffering with dementia. And so, you know, always are we looking at ways in which that we can increase the service that we provide. So yes, we're always looking at new ways.
Keeping your finger on the industry knowledge.
it's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And shared about it and stuff. And I think that comes to the end of our submitted questions at this point. So that's it for me. You've done the heavy lifting here, and an amazing job of that. And I can't thank you enough for joining me and answering all these amazing questions. But thank you, everyone. Now I'm going to turn it over to Lana, Director of Financial Services, and she will speak to other ways people can engage on the 2023 budgets and provide us with a sneak peek as to what we can expect next from the 2023 budget engagement process. Over to you, Lana.
So we're going to be summarizing the surveys and sharing that with the departments and agencies in July. Then we'll be closing the loop with council and the community, providing a summary.
Lana, you're muted.
I apologize for that, everyone. I'll just start again. So we're going to be summarizing the input that we received from everyone by providing the information to our departments and agencies. And then we will be closing the loop with our council and community by providing a feedback document. The feedback will be influencing the budget. The budget will be held in January of 2024 3, as it is deferred due to the election. Next slide, please, Jen. And so other ways to engage. So on June 24th, we will be attending the night market in Market Square. So we look forward to seeing you there. We also have our survey open on our Get Involved Kingston project page until June 27th. We also have an ideas section on our Get Involved Kingston page where you can share your suggestion on how to the city can provide a service more effectively and efficiently. I just want to take this time to thank Casey and Rob for joining us this evening, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you again for taking the time to join us this evening. I'm going to launch an evaluation poll, and this gives us feedback on your experience with the technology and how you learned about the engagement session. And this helps us make these engagement and budget talks better for you every time. So Mary, knowing that you're our sole in-person or virtual attendee tonight, it would be great to have your feedback. There's other ways to get involved. As Lana said, you can watch the recorded session on YouTube, and on Get Involved Kingston, you can sign up for project updates. On behalf of the City of Kingston, thank you for sharing your time with us this evening, and we wish you a pleasant night.